I think this makes confidence quite tangible because then it is about everything. So then you do get that good sleep and you do have that good self-talk and you do have that great diet and you do get it right in the gym and you do execute with intent and intensity and focus in your training sessions.
Dan Abrahams, welcome back to the podcast.
Erica, I'm delighted, honored. I think it's been a couple of years since we've last spoken, but so cool to be here. So thank you for the invite.
Well, you're one of my favorite sports psychologists. I mean, you're just so big in the world of soccer, but all the concepts you talk about are just so great for all competitive athletes, youth athletes as well. So I'm really excited to unpack confidence today. I know we've been chatting back and forth, and I get a lot of inquiries about how to build confidence in young athletes. And I think the old school model is, yeah, just do more reps, practice more. So more of the physical side of things. But I'm just really curious about the mental training side of building that unstoppable confidence. So I'll let you take it away. I know there's a lot to discuss.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you. I mean, let me riff a few things, and then you can come back at me and ask some questions, and we'll go from there. Um, Confidence can be so frustrating, can't it? Because it seems to come and go. It doesn't seem to be something that somebody has permanently. For me, I think it's something that has to be worked on every single day, especially if you're an ambitious athlete, no matter your age, every single day, I think you have to do something to work on it, to take care of it, to manage it. And look, you know what? I'm going to take a real extreme lens of confidence here, and I'm going to say, well, in fact, I'm going to recall upon an experience I had about 5 years ago. I was 5, 6 years ago. I was lead psychologist for England rugby, so a different sport here, not soccer, but I was lead psychologist for England rugby. Rugby in England, not so huge in America, but very big in England. Um, we were talking a lot about player confidence, and one of the coaches said something to me that really resonated with me. It's an extreme lens of confidence, but it's something that we started to talk about every single day with the players at England Rugby. I mean, some of the fittest, strongest athletes in the world, rugby players. And this coach said to me, Dan, when I think of confidence, nothing is neutral. Nothing is neutral. He said to me, everything counts. And he said, I think our players need to see it that way, that nothing is neutral. Every single thing counts. You're either building your confidence or you're breaking your confidence. So you're either building or you're breaking your confidence. Every word counts. Every sentence counts. Every affirmation counts. Every behavior counts. Every action counts. Every activity in training counts. Every session counts. Maybe every conversation counts. Maybe every thought, emotion, and feeling counts. Everything that you do, every activity, every set, every rep in the gym counts. Nothing is neutral. Everything counts. You're either building your every everything works towards building your confidence or breaking your confidence. Now, how absolutely true what I'm about to say is, I don't 100% know, but again, I'm going to suggest, as I'm suggesting adopting this philosophy, it could be useful for the listeners. What I'm about to say, I don't know if it's 100% true, but let's just go with it. The brain and the body, or the mind and the body, is always keeping count. Is always keeping count. Again, is that 100% true? I don't know, but it's always keeping count. And again, you're either building your confidence or you're breaking your confidence. Whatever you are doing, or whatever is inputting in here, or whatever you're inputting into your body, you're building or breaking, and the body and the mind is always keeping score. So with that in mind, and again, it's an extreme lens. I know it's an extreme lens, and it sounds like I'm putting a lot of pressure on people. Well, everything counts, but it's useful to look at it like that, because then you can start to think about how you're talking to yourself, the thoughts that you're having, the emotions and the feelings that you're experiencing, and what you're giving oxygen and what you're suffocating, the behaviors you're engaging in, the style in which you're executing your actions, the way you're doing your gym work, which I know as a is it strength and conditioning trainer or a personal trainer for you would be enormously important to you, and I know you'd back me up on this. I know that for all the coaches listening in, they want their players to engage in their reps, to engage in their activities, to engage in their sessions with focus, with intensity, with intent, and with integrity, right? So when a player looks at this from the lens of everything counts, nothing is neutral, to me, that promotes this notion of you've got to go out there and you do have to focus and you do have to do things with intent, on purpose, intentionally. You do have to complete those reps effectively because they build or they break your confidence. If you're doing them, if you're doing things right in the gym, if you are eating right, if you are sleeping right, if you are getting good rest and recuperation, if you are talking to yourself positively, if you are reflecting on your best games, if you are managing the ants, the automatic negative thoughts that you might experience, if you're doing all these things, you are building. Nothing is neutral. You are building. Whereas if you're doing the opposite, if you're sloppy, if you're distracted, if you're disconnected, if you're if you're giving oxygen to, let's say, the destructive, unhelpful, negative thoughts and feelings that you might be experiencing, nothing is neutral. You are breaking your confidence. Your body and your mind is keeping the score. So where I want to start here, Erica, is to say maybe adopt that philosophy. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that you have to be thinking about this all the time. Okay. I think that's a little bit unrealistic and we're human beings and hey, we don't want to be over the top here. But it does mean if you are an ambitious athlete, if you are ambitious for your sport, whether it's that you want to win a scholarship or you want to go on and discover how good you can be, and that might be venturing into the pro game, I think this makes it quite tangible. I think this makes confidence quite tangible because then it is about everything. So then you do get that good sleep and you do have that good self-talk and you do have that great diet and you do get it right in the gym and you do execute with intent and intensity and focus in your training sessions. And all of that is building your confidence. And you have to look at it that way. You have to be able to get to the end of your day and say, wow, I had a great day building my confidence today. And even if you've had a few moments where it's not gone according to plan, or you've been a bit distracted or a bit disconnected and not quite as intense as you want, or a bit sloppy here, and that's okay because then you're building your awareness of where you're breaking your confidence. And that's quite useful because it's like, okay, well, I had those moments there that weren't so great, but I had all these great moments here. That is helping me build my confidence. I feel great now. I'm ready to go. I'm going to do that again tomorrow, the next day, the next day. And that's very powerful. It's powerful for your preparation for performance. It feeds your ability to learn your sport because you're feeling confident about yourself because you're doing the right things every single day. And it helps you to engage with your sport and others in sport because, again, you know that you're doing the right things for your game. Does that make sense to you, Erica? Is that meaningful to you?
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And I love the holistic approach. And I like that you talk about that intent behind the physical side of this. So getting quality reps, the sleep and recovery, and how those play into confidence. I don't think a lot of people think about those things with increasing confidence. So I'm glad you mentioned those. But then on top of all that, you have to have that good self-talk and those affirmations. And I've read your first book, Soccer Tough, and you give some really good insight on some self-talk and just very solid affirmations that, that just aren't the usual, like, I'm enough. Like, you give some more actionable ones. So maybe give some examples of those affirmations and self-talk for our youth players. Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, Simply Faster, and one of my favorite speed timing systems from them, the Freelap. I use it for my own sprint training as well as for my athletes, and they love it. It's super easy to set up, you can take it to the field on your own, and you can get accurate speed times to track your progress. Check the Freelap link in the caption below to start adding timing into your speed sessions. If you know me, you know I love my Freelap. If you're serious about speed, it's time to start timing.
Absolutely. And just very briefly coming back at you, listening to what you said there in response to my first comments about confidence. I see the gym as a psychological playground. I really do, as you said there. It's a great opportunity to bolster and build your ability to focus, to execute with intent, to find that right activation level, the energy levels that then you can draw upon in the game. To me, the gym is a psychological playground. And just very briefly here, my last appointment in soccer was with Feyenoord in the Dutch Eredivisie Championship, and I was fortunate enough to work with somebody who started to become very famous in soccer, and that's Arne Slot, who's now the Liverpool head coach and has just won the Premier League. Just as we're speaking now, has just won it in the last couple of weeks. But I worked with Arne for 2 years at Feyenoord, and we very much took that philosophy. We had this term high performance mindset, or HPM for short. And you'll be delighted to hear that the heads of performances at Feyenoord and the strength and conditioning coach and the sports scientist in the gym, we were doing HPM, high performance mindset competitions. The gym was where we did a lot of psychology work because that is so important to understand. And let's come back to confidence. That's where you can build confidence. And to speak to your question, going back to my first book, Soccer Tough, that you spoke about there, and very kindly a few years ago, actually, Gareth Bale, who I think everybody listening in will remember, Real Madrid, LA Galaxy, amazing Welsh player, very kindly said Soccer Tough changed his life. Erica, I'm not sure it changed his life. It was very nice of him to say so, and it sold a few books off the back of it. But that's what he said, so let's just go with that, perhaps. But in Soccer Tough, I was so keen to bring sports psychology alive for players, especially, because I didn't think when I sat down, this is 13 years ago I released that book. I feel so old now. And and when I sat down and I started to write, I just thought there's not a lot out there that it's really practical for players on the mental side. Again, I'm still proud to say it's still sells around the world and has been translated into multiple languages and sells very heavily in the US, especially obviously within soccer. But I wanted to bring this alive, so I very much throughout the book gave very practical ideas around psychological concepts such as confidence. And this is how I open the book. And I talk about, I think in chapter 1, I talk about tapping into your memory. Memory is a wonderful source for confidence. And specifically, what I mean is remembering you at your best. And this can be part of your nothing is neutral. You're either building or you're breaking your confidence. Part of building your confidence can be tapping into your memory, remembering you at your best. What did that look like? What did that feel like? What did others see when you played at your best? You might draw upon a best game. And you might start thinking about you at your best, the runs, the movements, the actions, the 1v1s, the challenges, the sprints that you made, the headers that you won, the great passes, whatever it is for you in your role and the responsibilities in your role on the pitch, whatever it was, you were doing great in that best game. Remember that every single day. Spend a few minutes every day reflecting on you at your best. Also, what I talk about in Soccer Tough is not just tapping into your memory, so tapping into the past, also using your imagination. So now we're forwarding to the future. What would it look like at the weekend if you went and played soccer and you played at your very best, or you played your sport and you played your very best? What would that look like? What would that feel like? A 10 out of 10 game. What would you be doing? How would you be going about your business? How would you be holding yourself? What would your teammates be experiencing? What would the opposition be experiencing? If you played your dream game at the weekend, doesn't matter what sport it is that you play, what would that look like? So Memory, imagination, memory, imagination. We can use those two. Now there's a third. There's a third that I talk about in Soccer Tough, which is tapping into your perception. Memory, imagination, perception. Memory, imagination, perception. The past, the future, and in many respects, perception being the now. And I talk about perception in Soccer Tough from the perspective of picking model players. This is one way. There's probably lots of ways to tap into your perception, but perceiving who you want to be out there, the style in which you want to play. Is there somebody? And it doesn't have to be a world famous player. It doesn't have to be somebody that's an Aitana Bonmati, the incredible Spanish women's player, or Lionel Messi, the incredible men's player. Right? It doesn't have to be that standard. It could be somebody who plays at your club or even within your team who you admire, who has the kind of qualities that you're trying to work on. Tap into your perception of what they're good at, what they're strong at, why they are so good at that. What does that look like? Think about that in detail. Get great pictures in your head. And I think all of this comes back to confidence because you are creating those pictures. You're creating a world of you at your best. That drives your confidence. You're building your confidence. You're imagining playing great at the weekend. You're getting great pictures. Pictures, when you evoke great pictures, you drive great feelings, and confidence is so much, not everything, but it's so much of feeling, right? So you're doing that with your imagination. And then perception. What we know from psychology research, if I was just to go a bit deeper here, is that a great source of confidence is if that person over there can do it, I can do it as well. And that's sometimes why it can be so important to pick a model player that maybe isn't somebody like Aitana Bonmati or Lionel Messi, because they can kind of feel up there in the stars, right? Not to suggest that people can't get there, but you might not. You might park that for the time being, and you might pick somebody who maybe is a couple of years older than you, who plays at your club or something, or your organization, that feels a little bit closer to you. What we know from the research is if they can do it, I can do it. If they can play like that, I can do that. And it bolsters our confidence. So, memory, imagination, perception are three psychological tools that you carry with you always, and you can use at any time. Chilling out, use memory, imagination, perception. Watching TV, even, and not really engaging with what you're watching, use your memory, imagination, perception. On the way to training, memory, imagination, perception. Chilling out, with mates, memory, imagination, perception. You can use these tools at any time.
I love those tools, and I think they're just so great to have in your toolbox to bounce back quickly from a bad game. Because, like
Mm.
you said earlier in the conversation, confidence, it can be all over the place depending on how you play, and you're never going to be perfect. Sometimes you're in a complete rut. And I know we discussed this last time from what I remember that you said it's okay to acknowledge things aren't going my way and then eventually take action and start to use these tools. But it's okay to kind of have that anxiety and be like, oh my gosh, what did I just do?
It's so well said, Erica. I completely agree with that, and I'm unsurprised we had that conversation last time as well. And it's worth reinforcing. I mean, I'm blessed in my life to work with players of all ages, all levels, all abilities, boys, girls, men, women. I work with everybody. I'm blessed to work with some of the best players in the world. And when I work, even with the very best players in the world, one of the main messages I'm sending to them almost every single day is this: there will be tough moments when you go and compete. You might make a mistake. You'll probably have some unhelpful thoughts, emotions, feelings that might be considered negative. You don't know how your teammates are going to play. You don't know how the opposition are going to play. All of these things exist. You might have a period of low performance. That exists too. And all of that is okay. Okay? All of that is okay. Your job is to strive to, for example, keep great body language no matter what. Keep using your self-talk in a positive and proactive and productive manner, no matter what. Stay as close to, using my terms here, as close to 10-10 HPM, 10 out of 10 high performance mindset as you possibly can. I have a technique called a game face, which draws on players picking action-based words. For example, I have a world famous client who has a game face of dominant and relentless, dominant and relentless. So he strives to stay dominant and relentless no matter what. Every day I would say to him, there will be some tough moments. You might have thoughts, emotions, feelings that are unhelpful. You may make a mistake, but you're going to stay dominant and relentless no matter what. And I want him rehearsing that no matter what every single day. And the important thing here with relation to confidence is when you have that kind of narrative and when you have that underpinning philosophy to competition, that sophisticated philosophy to competition, if you like, it means that there's less chance of you um, breaking your confidence if you do make a mistake, if there are tough moments, because you've accepted these things will happen. So you do become better at sustaining your levels of confidence when you start to create that kind of narrative that, you know, whatever sport you're playing, it's going to be tough. You've got an opposition who want to beat you. You're a human being with over 300 bones in your body. You're not going to peak every single time. All of that is okay, but to sustain a sense of confidence, you've got to accept that, but hold as great a mindset as is possible. I think that's absolutely critical. I think the final thing to say there, and one other way to look at this is, look, as you've mentioned, you're not always going to be 100% confident all the time. That's just nobody has come along and ever experienced that the whole of their playing career, right? Nobody has. So if you're down at 70% confidence or 60% confidence, if you can look at it like that, can you get 100% of that 70%? Can you get 100% of that? Can you get the most out of what you've got on that day? Can you stick to your best mindset irrespective of maybe even if you're just down at 60% confidence? Because when you start to do these things, you give yourself your chance, your best chance for your best possible performance. And that word possible is really important, Erica. It's about having your best possible performance. So get the most out of the confidence that you have, get the most out of your high performance mindset, utilizing things like self-talk and body language and all the techniques I talk about in my books and other great sports sites talk about in their books, and have your best possible performance. Because ultimately, that is a confidence builder as well. I had a 7 out of 10 performance on a day when it was so easy to have a 6 out of 10 performance. I had a 7 out of 10 performance when I know somebody else might have had a 5 out of 10 performance. I got the most out of my performance. I was kind of low confidence, but I got the most out of it. That's such a crucial position to adopt when you're going in for competition.
Wow, I think that's such a great message for especially the sports parents listening to this because I think sometimes when their soccer player like loses their confidence after one bad game, it's like all hell breaks loose, like we need to fix everything now. And can we just sit with it being, okay, maybe it wasn't a 10 out of 10, but did they try their best? Did they have good body language? Were they helping their teammates or doing what they could control in that game? I think that's such an important message to reiterate to parents that you don't have to always be perfectly confident.
And I love your summary there, and it's so true. It's making me think of all the times I've worked with players who, you almost start from the basis of, often parents contacting and saying my child has had a few bad games or a really bad game, and can you help them? And it's so much of it, rather than sticking a plaster over it, it's actually changing their view of the world, of a competitive world. We're so socialized into gotta win, gotta win, gotta win, gotta perform, gotta perform, gotta perform, gotta be 100% confident, gotta have that positive attitude, in terms of I'm going to win and I'm going to play great. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a positive attitude. I'm not saying we want to have a positive attitude, but let's examine what a positive attitude is. Because I would argue a positive attitude is understanding what it is within and not within your control. Great point from you there. It's understanding that. Let's come back to what I said before. As a human being, I have over 300 bones in my body. I'm not going to coordinate great all the time. I've got a whole bunch of hormones running through my system, which means I'm not always going to have the right ones being released. I can wake up in a low mood. I can experience anxiety, stress, worries, doubts, and so on and so forth. I can experience my drops in confidence. It's having that slightly different, more sophisticated lens of all of that exists and all of that is okay. A positive attitude isn't, I am definitely going to win. I am the best player here. I am definitely going to perform. A positive attitude is, I can take control of myself irrespective of the situation. A positive attitude is, there will be some tough times out there because I respect my opponent. There will be some tough times because it is a challenging game. There will be some tough times, and I am going to respond as close to 10 out of 10 high performance mindset as I can. That's a positive attitude. A positive attitude isn't that simple notion of I'm going to win, I'm going to perform, I'm the best player. That that really isn't. It's just a little bit broader and it's a little bit deeper. And when you have a slightly more sophisticated narrative like we're talking about, that gives you a better chance to deal with the ups and downs that inevitably happen.
You used to work in golf, right? Or do you still work with golfers?
I used to be a professional golfer, Erica. I was a very bad professional golfer. I didn't win any money whatsoever, and it's largely why I'm a sports psychologist now, to work out why it all went wrong.
Okay, so I have such a respect for golf after
Okay.
watching the Full Swing documentary. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's just, I mean, the mental gymnastics golfers go through is absurd. Like, and I'm a huge fan now of watching all the tournaments and just recently watched the Masters, and Rory
Yep,
McIlroy hasn't won anything in years.
yep.
And it's you even see at the highest level that these athletes they go through some very long ruts, and for us to kind of put that pressure on our kids, like you always need to be confident, you always need to be perfect and perform. It's like this is so beyond unrealistic for anyone.
I think Rory is a wonderful example. I mean, what Rory hadn't won for years was a major championship. So
Yeah.
there's a bit of a background story to Rory in as much as he was a phenomenal young player. At the in during his teenage years, he turned pro early. He won early. He was after Tiger Woods blew the fields apart, became the best in the world. And as a consequence, had, as you're alluding to there, had a lot of pressure on himself. If anything, his pressure was trying to fulfill his incredible potential. Could he rival Tiger Woods' career haul of major championships? Could he even rival Jack Nicklaus, who's won more majors than anybody else? Could he be one of the greatest winners in sport? It's that kind of pressure that he put on himself, and as a consequence, you said you've just won, just watched the Masters, and he won the Masters, and he hadn't won a major championship for a decade. The last major he won was back in 2014, but he's a wonderful example of somebody who probably at the very beginning of his career, he was so good and had so much skill in his hands that he didn't necessarily need to pay that much attention to the psychological aspect. But as he started to put that much pressure on himself, and as other things in life became challenging for him, young family, etc., he actually, from 2013, he started to speak to a sports psychologist, one of the world's leading ones, Dr. Bob Rotella, and he spent the last 12 years spending time with the Dr. Rotella and just visiting him in Virginia, spending days at a time with him, having conversations with him working systematically on the mental side of his game. And over the years, he's had ups and downs, and he's definitely got better mentally. But it took that long, and then he really he won the Masters. You probably saw it, his reaction at the end, right? And just the relief, because that meant he had won the Grand Slam, which meant he'd won all four major championships, which is he was became the sixth person in history to do that. So yeah, look, there's so many aspects of golf that are obviously very psychological. You know, you're on your own, so that's psychological in and of itself. It's slow paced, so there's a lot of time to think, especially when you're playing not so good, which was a hallmark of my career, playing particularly badly with lots of time to think. And there's also an interesting dynamic where you're hitting a stationary ball. So again, it's like the golf swing. The golf swing lasts for about a second or a second and a half, top whack. The brain is working in milliseconds. So when you watch golf, Erica, watch it from the perspective of they can be mid-swing and a thought or a feeling pops into their conscious awareness, which influences their muscle tension in that moment, in that split second, which influences how they work the club through the ball, which influences where the golf ball goes. So golf is what the ball does. What the ball does is determined by what the swing tells it to do or the club tells it to do. What the club tells it to do is determined by the hands, the arms, the body, the movement of what and the movement of the hands, arms, and body is heavily influenced by thoughts, emotions, feelings, and where you're paying attention. So it's a heavily psychological sport. That's not to suggest that a sport like soccer isn't, because again, the milliseconds thing works in as much as everybody says, oh, soccer, it's a quick game. How is it psychological? Well, again, the brain works in milliseconds. So the brain is designed to throw up thoughts, emotions, feelings in milliseconds. Our brain is designed to judge what's going on around us. It's going well, it's not going so well. I'm playing great, I'm playing poorly. The opposition are great, and so on and so forth. It's a team game. Now, I would always say, as a professional golfer or a golfer as an amateur, I paid my entrance fee and I could go and play, right? Um, I didn't have to worry about anybody else. In soccer, you've got teammates. And let's face it, all of our coaches want us to be great teammates and maybe even great leaders. So there's an interesting further dynamic there from a psychological perspective. So that part makes soccer a more psychological sport. And, then there's let's come back to, I've paid my entrance fee. I go play the golf tournament. I can choose to play in that golf tournament. As a soccer player, if you don't get chosen, you don't get chosen. If you're on the bench, you're on the bench. You don't get to choose. That's out of your control. So you don't get that in golf. You don't get that in tennis. You get to play. So again, every sport has its slightly different psychological dynamic, but golf is very psychological, as you saw from the Netflix documentary.
Yeah, I used to think golf was so boring, but now I love watching it, full disclosure, as a soccer girl over here. But yeah, if you guys haven't seen that documentary, definitely check out the series. It's fantastic. But coming back to soccer, I think like the individual side of it for the mental component can be a lot of pressure too, because if a player makes a huge mistake on the field, they tend to take on that burden and blame the entire loss on themselves, even though there's 11 players on the field and it takes a whole team to win or lose. So I think that's when soccer players tend to feel that individual pressure, kind of like golfers do.
And it makes me think. So again, I know you know a little bit about the tools and the techniques I speak about in my books and in everyday sort of in my everyday consultancy practice. And a technique I have is squashing ants. And I've mentioned this already today, but ANTS being an acronym, the A for automatic, the N for negative, the T for thoughts, automatic negative thoughts. And I kind of, when I work with players, I kind of cheat a little bit because we have thoughts, emotions, feelings as human beings. When you think about our internal experiences, if you strip everything back, in essence, there's 8 billion people on planet Earth. And one thing we all do have in common is we all have thoughts, emotions, feelings, right? So when I talk about ants, ANTS, automatic negative thoughts, emotions, feelings. I bolt on the emotions and feelings. So why do players have ants going into a competitive game? Why do we have nervous ants and worried ants and anxious ants? And why do we have ants to meet your point of we make a mistake and we've got teammates and we have ants as a consequence of our teammates, maybe we feel that they're judging us. And I've come back to three sources of ants in competitive sport. Three words: importance, certainty, and security. Importance, certainty, and security. Importance. A game of soccer is important to us. So when we go and compete, it's important. We want to do well. When we want to do well in something, our nervous system and our brain happily responds by sending us ants, automatic negative thoughts. They're there designed to say, be careful, don't mess up. This is important to you. Okay. It's kind of your brain speaking to you in hushed, whispered tones. Just be careful. Don't make a mistake. Okay. Or I don't think you want to be that brave with that pass or something like that. So importance, high importance turns up the volume of ants, automatic negative thoughts, emotions, feelings, nervous ants, worried ants, doubting ants, so on and so forth. A game of soccer, an important game of soccer, a competitive game of soccer, is a moment of uncertainty. So let's think about this word certainty. Uncertainty. We're uncertain. We don't know how we're going to play. We don't know how the opposition are going to play. We don't know how our teammates are going to play. We don't know what's going to happen during the game. Certainty, when anything is uncertain, we turn up the volume of ants because it's uncertain. We're just unsure, right? So high importance, high uncertainty equals automatic negative thoughts, emotions, feelings. Okay. And then this final one, which further meets your point, especially with relation to this idea of making a mistake on the pitch. Security. A game of soccer that's really important to us, okay, is this is a moment of insecurity for us because we feel like we're going to be judged. This is how we're designed as human beings, without doing too much of a deep dive in evolutionary psychology. We kind of what drives us as human beings is to get along and get ahead. All right. We're kind of driven as human beings just to survive. That that drives so many of our behaviors and our responses and our reactions. So we're just trying to get along and get ahead. We're trying to get along with people. We go into a game of soccer that's important for us and others, and it's uncertain. Our volume of insecurity turns up because we're like, don't make a mistake, don't look stupid, don't look foolish. Most of our anxiety, most of our anxious ants, automatic negative thoughts, emotions, feelings, are social anxiety ants. It's about social anxiety. I've read somewhere it's about 70% of our anxieties, social anxiety, caring what other people think. So when we make a mistake in the middle of the pitch, everything about our brain and nervous system wants to shut us down, wants to make us crawl into the corner in many respects, hide in embarrassment. And that's where it becomes challenging to show for the ball, the next ball again. Create that space, close down that space, stay big and bold and strong and athletic and upbeat, because everything about us wants to crawl into the corner and go, I made a mistake. I look stupid. Everybody thinks I'm rubbish here. Don't make another mistake. What if I make another mistake? Oh, look, he plays on our confidence, right? So importance, uh, high level of importance, high level of uncertainty, high level of insecurity. All these things increase our ants and can turn down the volume of confidence. So this is where we need those tools and techniques out on the pitch. And this is what I'm passionate about, players having very simple tools and techniques to stay in their high performance mindset. When they've got that and they really engage with that and they can practice that in the gym, then they give themselves a better chance to high perform more consistently under pressure. They give themselves their best chance to have their best possible games more often. That's what I think.
So I want to do a specific example. So maybe a player in the heat of the moment in a game, they make a bad pass or they miss a wide open goal, just something crazy that's like, oh my gosh, why did I do this?
Mm,
How can they squash those ants in that moment and quickly move on and get back in the game?
yeah. So great scenario. Let me answer this in a few ways. Let me come back to, and for fun, I'll let people dive into my books for the broad definition of game face and using model players. And I've even got a very, very famous footballer here, soccer player here in the Premier League, who uses an animal for his game face, a lion, actually. Come to that in a second. But in essence, a game face is your competitive persona. I use this term game face. It's not, I obviously didn't come up with game face, right? But it's from a, I've drawn on this term and it's something I talk about in my books, being your game face. Your game face is your competitive persona. And the heartbeat of a game face are action-based words, adjectives. Action-based words and adjectives are very powerful because, as their name suggests, okay, they drive your thoughts about actions. And action-based words like upbeat, relentless, dominant, calm, focused, relaxed, cool, energized, lively, alert, sharp. I so often work with players to help them create game faces with these types of action-based words. Let's come back to this player who has those two action-based words of dominant and relentless, dominant and relentless. I got him to pick two action-based words based on him at his best. He came up with dominant, relentless. And so to deal with the kind of moments that you're speaking of, and this is the robustness and the power of a game face because it can deal with all these kinds of moments. This player commits himself to sticking to his game face, dominant and relentless, no matter what. So if I miss a chance to score, if I make a mistake, if I give the ball away, if my cross goes into Rosie, if we go a goal down, if we go a goal up, if we're playing great, doesn't matter what happens out there. I stay dominant and relentless no matter what. Every action, every second, every action, every second. So he goes into the game putting that high on his priority list. I like players to put it first, but high on his priority list, he's picturing that, visualizing that, imaging, mentally rehearsing that going into the game. And when he's out there, because it's just two action-based words, he it's a very fast acting tool to come back to. He can just think about these. If he starts to feel himself engulfed in ants, an ant farm in his head, he can squash those ants by coming back to dominant, relentless, just two words. And as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I might get a player to pick a model player to bolt onto those action-based words or an animal like a this player has a lion, so he is confident, relentless lion. He's a striker. And he loved the idea of an animal because he said, look, he had a bit of a chuckle about it at first when I asked him about an animal. He was like, really, Dan, an animal? But when he thought about it, he said, a lion, because a lion is the king. A lion is a predator. As a striker, I'm a predator. You see, the science here is our brains work quite metaphorically. I believe something like 70% of our language is metaphorical. The work here was done by somebody called George Lakoff back in the 1970s, who was at Berkeley University for the whole of his career. 70% of our language is metaphorical. We love metaphors. Metaphors are words that hold broad meaning. So he says lion and he thinks predator, king, my penalty area. I'm in control. I'm the king of this penalty area. I'm the predator. He says to me, Dan, I get my ants, my automatic negative thoughts if I've missed a few chances to score. I start to think it's not going to be my day. And he said, I recognize from video footage that that damages my awareness, my anticipation, my decision making, my athleticism, my speed, my sprints, my ability to lose a defender. So I know I have to stay confident, relentless line. He picked confident and relentless, and he's got to stay a line. So a game face is my number one tool that I would always direct players towards that I've written about in my books that stick to your game face no matter what. And you can embody that game face because it relates to body language. You can use your self-talk with that game face. That would be the number one thing. And there's lots of great psychs out there who have lots of great tools and techniques that I urge players to explore and be curious about. But that would be my number one go-to.
I did really like the game face concept, and you're so right about the science behind it. I think when players say, well, I'll be relentless and dominant, they can't fully visualize what that is. But if they have that lion attached to it, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ferocious out there. And they can put it all together. So it's such a great tool. I recommend you guys read Dan's book, Soccer Tough. I'll link it in the caption below. And Dan, I think this kind of like just puts a nice bow on top to this conversation that confidence is something that players have to fully commit to, whether it's in the moment in the game or at the macro level, just every single week working on these tools. And it's something that it's not going to come overnight. And for the parents listening, you have to really be consistent with all these tools. So, is there anything else you would add? Your next book, anything you're working on?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for the conversation and a compliment to you, a wonderful metaphor to finish things off there with your bow on top of the conversation. That you threw a metaphor straight in there.
Yes.
70% of I love it, Erica. I see what you did there. That was brilliant. Um, so yes, thank you for this. I really enjoyed this conversation, my books are Soccer Tough, Soccer Tough 2, and Soccer Brain. Soccer Brain is for coaches, and Soccer Tough and Soccer Tough 2 is for coaches and for well, predominantly for players, but coaches read it. I'm currently working on a book, which we had scheduled this conversation, if truth be known, to talk about my book, but I'm a few months behind. I need to practice what I preach and focus better when I'm at my desk and get things done quicker and be more efficient. So, but definitely, I'm going to commit to sort of September, October. That book will be out, and it's about becoming a better competitor. And gra graciously, you've invited me back on to talk about that book then, which I think will be more relevant. But look, for me, I'm always working every day. I'm a bit of a social media kind of person, so I write every day. I on X. I've got three X accounts. Shameless, I know, but the main one for soccer would be at Dan Abrahams 77, disastrously giving my age away there, at Dan Abraham 77. And I write every day. I post on LinkedIn 4 times a day, 4 articles a day. So at Dan Abrahams there. And I have a Facebook at Dan Abrahams soccer, at Dan Abrahams soccer. So I'm working on that every day and I post 24 times a day, once an hour there. I said I was shameless. And then Instagram at Dan Abrahams Sport. So I'm saying that because you invited me to talk about what work I'm doing. And that's so much of what I do, Erica. I like to give 90% at least of my work away. People can read about the kind of things that we've spoken about today. And to meet your point at the end there, absolutely. Confidence is an everyday thing. I think it was the wonderful, marvelous, brilliant, one of the greatest players of all time, Mia Hamm, the former American soccer player, who said, confidence is like a bed. You've got to make it every single day. And I couldn't. I was certainly nowhere near as good a soccer player as her, and not as good a philosopher, seemingly, or psychologist. So we'll leave it on that great quote.
Awesome. Yeah, she's an absolute legend. I didn't know she said that. That's such a mic drop. So
Indeed.
great. Yeah, and I'll include all of your links in the caption below, all of
Okay.
the books, and the new book will be on Amazon for sure.
Always, yes. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
perfect. So we're gonna have you back on. Yeah, we're gonna
Thank
talk
you.
about the concepts in the book. You already kind of told me about what you're writing about, and guys, it is exciting. So Dan will be back later in the year. If you like the video, feel free to leave a comment And more importantly, share. Share with someone who needs to hear this message. I think the more we can get the word out, and Dan spoke about just being really active on social and giving away these resources and the work that he's doing because it can help many people. So if this helped you, please share with someone who you think needs to hear about these concepts. So, Dan, thank you so much, and I'll see everyone next time.